Committee for Thursday, May 5th, 2016. It's a little after 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do I need to have everybody introduce themselves again? Okay. Larry, starting with you, let's go around the table and state your name.
Larry Abel, citizen.
Sid Lykin, Lane County Board.
Pat Farr, Lane County Board.
Pete Sorensen, Lane County Commissioner.
Mike Coles, Lane County Assessor.
Christine Moody, Budget Manager.
Steve Mokrajski, County Administrator.
Faye Stewart, County Commissioner.
Herb Blugman, Citizen Member.
And Dennis Hitchman, Citizen Member.
Mr. Chair, do I have some kind of control here that I didn't?
We can do that for you.
First item, I believe Mr. Mokrajski would like to make a comment about public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, it doesn't appear that there's anyone here to make public comment today. We don't take public comment as a regular course of business during the work sessions, but we have been encouraging any interested individuals to attend the work sessions as they're public meetings, and if anyone is interested in providing comments, we want to make sure that they go to lanecounty.org/budget, and there's a link on that page. You can find all the information, the proposed budget message, and the overall budget detail. And there's a link on there they can click on. It says email us, and they can, that email then will come directly to us, and they can provide comments on anything they would like related to proposals that have been put forward, and then we'll share those comments with the Budget Committee. So again, for anyone that's listening, lanecounty.org/budget, you can submit comments that way, and we'll keep the Budget Committee apprised and the feedback we receive.
Okay. Any other committee business? Yes.
I will just note for the committee, because I did not note it the other evening, that there are note cards on the table, and then we'll make sure that those are out at every meeting, where you can write down any questions that you might not have a chance to get to, or something that you think might take staff a little more time to gather for you. Feel free to write those down, and then we'll gather them at the end of the meeting.
Okay. And also that this is a revised agenda, that there were some revenue matters that are not going to be presented tonight, that were on the original agenda. And I would make a quick comment to Steve and staff and Shonda that I looked at the Lane County website, and there's one page where there's a whole list of all the departments, and the performance auditor is not on that list. And I think it should be at department level to be contacted. I'm happy to show you that. It's a page, you go to Lane County, and then there's at the top, it's departments. I didn't see you under performance or audit pay or.
It's county performance. It's right under county council.
Okay. Okay. Any other committee business? Welcome, you two.
Sorry.
It's okay. I just have you introduce yourselves for the record. We did go around the table to confirm your attendance today, so.
Dale Stumberg.
Lori Trigger, citizen member.
Okay. I think we've covered everything. Shall we move on to assessment and taxation?
Sounds great. Mike Coles, Lane County Assessor. Today I'm going to try to keep the presentation fairly short and leave more time for question and answer. Also, feel free to interrupt if you have some questions on anything that I'm presenting today. Some of the initial information that you've probably seen many times, but I just wanted to include it in to remind the board and the committee members of some of the work that our department does do. So essentially, our department has several critical functions. The first critical function is the assessment of property per ORS standards at 100% of real market value. We appraise the property with constraints that ballot measure 47 and 50. The second main component is the taxation of property and collection of those taxes, primarily also with measure 5 with the constraints of $5 and $10 a thousand. Those duties pretty much encompass, in summary, the work that we do. It's a year-long job. We have currently 83 taxing districts that we collect on behalf of, and each of those taxing district is I consider them all customers, as long as also the citizens of Lane County, they're also customers of our department and Lane County. Lane County itself, from the dollars that we collect receives about 11 to 12% or 11 to 12 cents on the dollar. So the work that we do is primarily collecting dollars for the different districts and for the school district in terms of state and Lane County. Values by property type, I always throw that slide in because it just shows the where most of the tax dollars come from, which is residential. Approximately 65% of the tax dollars do come from residential properties. Commercial is approximately 12%, and industrial, and then followed by farm, forest, multifamily, and utility, personal property. So the 2016-17 proposed budget keeps our department whole. I wanted to note, and I mentioned this probably every year since 2012-13, is that we did lose 12 positions in 2012-13, and I think one or two of the years before that. Our department is at kind of a crossroads. The real estate market is picking up. Partition plats, I just signed one about 5 minutes before I walked up here, and one yesterday, a new subdivision. Building permit activity is picking up, the economy is picking up, and when the layoffs were made in 2012-13, that was at a lull in the market when we could sustain and handle those cuts. We're at a point right now where we're able to do our statutory obligations, but it's pushing staff to the limit. We really are at a crossroads with our department. So just something to throw out for maybe the next fiscal year. I know we have extra help funds budgeted for 2016-17, but for 17-18, to accommodate the additional workload, we'll probably be requesting additional staff help to bridge that gap. There are some things we're trying to do to mitigate that work to make things more efficient, and I'll get to that in a little bit here. The structure of our department really hasn't changed, and assessment taxation fully supports the county's strategic plan. We have developed our own strategic plan in conjunction with the county's plan, and our departmental plan focuses a lot on business process review for efficiency, training staff that are new staff members and existing staff members, and also just making sure that our work environment is conducive to the optimal use of taxpayer dollars. So some constraints. CAFA is always a constraint. For those of you that don't know CAFA, I don't think I need to explain it because I think everyone probably in this room does, but it's revenue that we receive back from the state that we essentially pay into the state, from recording of deeds to interest received on delinquent taxes to interest received on that fund itself. The last communication that I received from the Department of Revenue about 2 weeks ago indicated it was down about 3%. However, the communication I received before that showed it was about even. So we'll wait and see what we actually receive in CAFA grant funds. We estimated about $1 million in CAFA grant, and that's about 16-17% of our proposed budget. Other constraints include our software system. Back in 1995, we started doing an RFP for replacing our mainframe system. In 96, 97, we viewed several software packages. We converted in 98, 99, and we're running on that legacy system now. At some point in time, it will have to be replaced with a newer system, as it is now about 16, 17 years old. We are putting funds towards that in our capital reserve, but we have still a little ways to go on the fund balance. We've had retirements of key staff in assessment taxation. Again, that it's kind of a double-edged sword. Budget-wise, it saves money because we hire staff at a lower wage, but productivity-wise, it takes staff time away to train new staff and bring the new staff up to speed, which uses these resources for existing staff and new staff. Let's see, our work is being closely monitored by the Oregon Department of Revenue. They are a great partner to work with. They make sure that we are in compliance, both from statutory standards and from our race report that we submit each year. As I indicated at the start of the presentation, and I really wanted to emphasize this, is the economy improves as the building permit activity improves, the workload picks up, the resources that we do have, we will gain some efficiencies, and I'll speak to that in a few moments, but we are at a crossroads as far as for what we have with resources and what we as a department can do to meet our statutory obligations. Our appraisal inventory is fairly out of date. It reminds me of, I think it started in 91, when in 89 we hired new appraisal staff per state funding, and we started doing reappraisal cycles, finished the 6-year reappraisal cycle of the county in 95, I believe. Then of course Measure 47 to 50 passed. Our inventory is limited to inspections for sales and for new building permits. The priority of our assessment staff is building permits to make sure those go on the tax roll. That's the number one priority. We also verify sales. We're going to do a little bit of change this upcoming year and probably change the constraints of what sales we verify and hopefully start a reappraisal cycle, and using the extra help funds and using funds that we normally, or FTE that we normally spend on sales verification to maybe start a reappraisal project, which would be nice to start looking at some of our older inventory. We always have appeals. They take a large drain of our resources, especially when they do go to tax court. And as you all know, new laws, every year the legislature puts out new either constraints, opportunities, or sometimes just it's confusing what they're trying to do. So we'll see. This is a slide that I like to show as far as where currently Lane County sits. This is 2015-16 data at a dollar expenditure per account. So we are just above Douglas County at $35 essentially per account, the expenditure to tax, administer, and collect. And so we are at the bottom, and I consider at the bottom because Douglas County is primarily, or a large portion, U.S. forest ground, more than ours. So we are very efficient in what we do, and our staff does a wonderful job within our constraints. So successes, we did certify a tax roll of $478 million, and every year that has gone up accordingly. We mail approximately 177,000 tax statements each year. We achieved 100% of real market value as required by the state with our ratio study. And we processed all November payments were processed at the end of November, which is really good with the help of our lockbox service. When I was working in the 90s, we used to have trays and trays of tax payments that would take months to process. and now it's pretty much instantaneous as far as when they go up to Portland. I know sometimes we receive feedback about the tax payments going to Portland, but it is a cost-effective way to process, not only for the taxing districts to get their funds quicker, but for our staff to do the regular duties that are assigned to them. Public information, we provided roughly 24,000 phone call assistance and about 3,800 in person. That is a downward trend because we're seeing more website hits than we have ever in the past. We're putting more information on the internet, and we're greatly looking forward to the county revamp of the website to provide more services to all our customers. In fact, I believe today or tomorrow we're enhancing our website to add receipts online, which taxpayers will be able to look at their receipts for taxes paid, which is one of a large component of the calls we receive around tax time. Processed roughly 1,400 deeds, and that is going up. It'll be interesting to see the real estate market this upcoming year because inventory is very low. I presented at the Springfield Realtors Board and at several other real estate offices the past few weeks, and talking to the agents, their inventory, some areas are under a month, it's incredible. A balanced market's around 6 months, and so properties that don't sell within a week or so or have multiple offers, in a lot of prime areas, there's something wrong with it. So the market is hot, inventory is low, and we'll see what happens with interest rates and all the dynamics that go with the real estate market. So major changes. As of Monday, we consolidated our department to one level in the lower level of the public service building. It's great. It's been in the works for years, and the consolidation, working side by side with appraisal and admin, has always been on the main level of the public service building. Property tax and records used to always be on the lower level. By working side by side, one of the opportunities that I spoke about earlier is developing some efficiencies of working together, working more cohesive as a team, and looking for, in our business process review, ways to make our department function more effectively and efficiently with taxpayer dollars. We did implement and complete a District 1 pilot program. It definitely paid for itself as far as in revenue received, especially for Lane County and the other counties that did take part in the project. It showed that it was cost effective for investment, both in regional partnerships and also in assessment and taxation. We did implement some service recapture charges for exempt accounts applications and for specially assessment applications to help cover the cost that it takes to process those specially assessed or exempt applications, and that went fairly well. One of the focuses that we are taking this year is looking not only at our regional partners, other counties, but our regional partners in the taxing districts, the city of Springfield, Eugene, and all the other taxing districts, of ways that we could either leverage our limited funds, and also looking at how we process building permits and communicate between the departments to make sure we're doing it effectively and efficiently with the resources that we do have. And again, refocusing appraisal resources to start some small reappraisal projects the upcoming year to help some of the dated inventory of property. Here's just a quick diagram of the consolidation. I believe we have a tour coming up in the 20th, I believe. And so I'm really excited about that, to show off some of the enhancements and just It was really nice to get rid of the, I hate to say orange because I'm a Beaver fan, but the orange and legacy panels that have been upstairs for quite a long time, and some of the equipment that we've used for centuries, but for a long period of time. It feels like it does. And just in summary, we are currently, the property tax revenues we receive are, I believe, are maximized based on what we have in resources, absent any aggressive reappraisal, and not aggressive as far as in value, just aggressive as far as in getting out there and looking at property and making sure we're adequately assessing property per statute. Prior reductions, again, make it difficult to take on additional projects, but we have, and we have, again, I can't emphasize enough on the staff that we do have, because we couldn't do it without both the managerial and every staff member in our department, because without the resources that we have personnel-wise, I'd be here today saying that we're not making our statutory obligations, and they do a wonderful job. And the focus is always on getting the current roll finished by statutory deadlines, getting the roll certified, and providing a general stable base of property tax dollars to the taxing districts and to Lane County. And that's it. I promise to keep it short. And I did cut out a number of slides I've had in the past, so if I missed something, please.
Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you. Mike, good presentation, appreciate it. And by the way, job well done in your, as our assessor, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
3 questions. First one is regarding the real estate uptick. So we've seen the uptick as far as sales of homes, but did you state that you're seeing permits actually beginning to uptick as well? Is that correct?
Permits are starting to uptick. I think that in the initial presentation there was an uptick in a number of permits. I think the presentation Tuesday was more countywide, and looking at the citywide with the in fact, I spoke to one of the smaller cities this morning, and they had uptick of, I think it was 7 new houses in the last few months. It's for a small community, that's big. So we are seeing additional workload. For segregations and divisions, I see Peggy routinely. And it's great to see her, because I'm signing those plats in the subdivisions, and it is an uptick. We're hopefully also the uptick, we've seen that also on commercial industrial side, which is work for us on the enterprise zone area of our department. Peter is very busy this year with the enterprise zone applications. We're at numbers we haven't seen in the past, which is a great sign. And industrial commercial permits, I know our commercial staff is it's pushed to the limit, and we are very busy assessing the new construction that is going on.
That's good to hear, because permitting there for a while was stagnant.
Yes.
We saw the sale of existing homes have been on the uptick for a bit, but that's really good news, actually. So, second question is on the pilot project. So it's completed, and so I'm glad to hear the report that you found it would. My question to you is, while this was a pilot project, would you recommend maybe another project where you have multiple counties again forming a coalition to see if there's efficiencies, or do you just think this is a one-time shot and you're done? What are your thoughts on that?
I would, due to the success of this project, I'd recommend something in the future. Definitely, as far as because of leveraged tax dollars, especially for an investment by the state, it's very important. Receiving 12 cents on the dollar for the county, it's hard to justify an investment of the magnitude that the state was able to grant us. The piece that I'd like to see in the future is probably less of an active role by Lane County and more of an active role by other counties in taking leadership of the project. That would be nice to see, because Lane County did take the most active role in this project.
Well, and I appreciate that. It's kind of my baby,
Yeah.
and so I appreciate that. The final question I have is relating to the CAFA grant. Now, as the assessors, as an association, have you taken a look at maybe coming up with maybe a legislative concept to address this, or maybe just asking the legislature just to abide by the original agreement, maybe that was put in place, or if you need something from, the AOC, the commissioners, has the association, I guess, is my question to you, have you talked about this where you can see more revenue coming back to Lane County and other counties like it should be?
Good question. I have had correspondence with Alex and with, I was waiting for a response back from the Assessors Association on priority as far as for trying to work with the legislature on recapturing back the money they swept a number of years back.
Yeah.
It's $5 million, and they never
Yeah.
funded it back. That $5 million would do us wonders.
I agree.
And
And I bring that up because
Yes.
Representative Barnhart is still chair of the Revenue Committee, and it just seems like to me that's, while he's there, I think this may be something we should take a look at, just because I'm glad you brought up the $5 million.
yeah,
And that would be,
it is on top of our list.
yeah, okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. So, Commissioner Larkin, you're suggesting that instead of giving us duties that cost us more, actually, the legislature should actually give us what they took away from us.
It's a novel.
I love it. My one thing, a great report, by the way, and I'd like to congratulate you since you were first appointed and then elected. The department seems to be in just fantastic hands. The morale down there is high. The customer service is, I think, at the highest level I've ever seen it. And just all in all, and with the new facility coming online, all in all, things are just moving smoothly. Not the most fun thing that people encounter with the county is paying their taxes, but when it's done in an efficient manner and a dignified manner, such as you're providing, that is double thumbs up.
Thank you.
That being said, you said our appraisal inventory is out of date. Many properties have not been physically inspected for over 20 years. I was at a City Club meeting a couple of weeks ago, and there was a person openly criticizing us for not appraising properties and assigning the correct use, the correct taxation to those properties. It was actually repeated in the Register Guard, and you may have seen that we're not doing our job as far as appraising properties and getting the correct level of taxation on that. We just heard about the $5 million that was taken away from us. That might help. But can you talk a little bit about why aren't we appraising the properties?
Sure. Before ballot measure 4750 passed, we had staffing levels that would allow for a cyclical reappraisal of property every 6 years. And after ballot measure 4750 passed, the state took that requirement away, where as a contingent for the CAFA grant and for requirements for the counties to provide more alternative methods of valuation of property. And our focus has been over that time in what's called hotspot appraisal, which is appraising areas that maybe statistically are out of compliance, but not focusing effort on a cyclical reappraisal of property. And that's been the focus since Measure 47 and 50. With the recalculation of process in our appraisal system, we can appraise all the property residential in the office, but it's only based on the inventory that's actually out there. And it's based on the sales data you receive. So what we're doing this year to help solve that, as far as solve the quandary of the question that was asked about the maybe out-of-date assessments, is that we used to go out and inspect sales that were within a small tolerance of the sales price, and that tolerance, we're going to raise it significantly. So it's going to free up resources where maybe 2,000 or 3,000 properties that would have been inspected for sales, we're going to inspect those in a reappraisal. And doing the reappraisal, you can inspect a lot more properties with that same resource because it's side-by-side properties. And once you get the models set up, you can probably do twice as many properties. And even if we get it on a 12-year cycle, I'll be happy.
Sorry, can I ask, is that what you mean by alternative methods of appraisal though?
Alternative methods of appraisal defined by the state include recalculation, include building new models. We did that. We finished our land-based residential about 3 years ago, where we reassigned land values to all residential properties throughout the county. We did that primarily in the office using the GIS. Very effective, but again, it was based on the inventory that's on the tax roll and what we can see from GIS.
I'll see if I can get back to where I was. So what you're describing is a system where we're not actually going out and physically taking a look at the properties.
Exactly.
Unless there's a deviation in the sale price versus the value that we
In addition to the ones that are building permits that are of significant nature.
And we're not appraising the properties visually because we don't have the staff to do it.
Correct.
And we don't have the staff to do it because A, Measure 4750 with property tax limitation, but B, we don't have the general fund money to send to the taxation
Exactly.
by the staff. So if we don't have the general fund money, we can't have the staff. If we don't have the staff, we can't appraise it correctly.
And it's kind of
the
the...
general fund money comes from, well, we don't need to talk about that.
Any other questions?
Mike, I'm new to the committee, so I'm asking something that everybody else probably knows, but what's the annual ratio study?
The annual ratio study is something that I've been involved with for quite a number of years. It's a study that is required by the state July 1st. We used to turn it in always a month late, but we were able to optimize it. Started out at 10,000 pages. It grew and it grew and it grew. We were able to make it electronic format, bring it down to a couple thousand pages. Essentially shows the sales that have occurred in Lane County in the past year. It shows the market areas, and it shows the level of assessment in each market area, and statistically how well a job we've done with the valuation of properties. And it's a publicly available report to anyone who asks for it. We have it usually available at our self-help area, and citizens can request a copy of it. It's a very handy report because it also has information about general market trends, just about the neighborhoods that we do reappraisal in, the work plan that we have projected for the upcoming year, and just a lot of good information that's inside that.
So basically it compares the valuation to the sales price?
It does show that. It shows what level of assessment. It shows, if I had, I'll actually show my little laser here, so if I get it working. One of the biggest pieces of the ratio study is each of the market areas has what's called a histogram that shows all the values, kind of like a bell curve. And the goal to get 100% is the properties in the center here, and some strong imagination lines, but the top, you want to get most of the properties within 10% of the sales price. And that's what the Department of Revenue really wants to see. You're going to have some trailers down here that are maybe 85% of the sales price. You're going to have some over here that are 115% of the sales price. And this goes down and down to kind of in trailers both sides. The people that are underassessed typically aren't going to appeal. You're probably not going to hear from them. We do hear usually from the people that are on the other side. And so, hope that answers your question. It does show that for each market area and for each neighborhood that we have delineated out, and those are all by school district and equality of neighborhood.
What are the metrics on your appeals in terms of how many happen and what the ratio of successfulness is?
I don't look at it as a successfulness. I look at it as more of, we had about 800 appeals, which is less than about 1/2 of our accounts. I believe that the board is usually about a 60%. I don't know the exact numbers this year, but the Board of Property Tax Appeals is a very important outlet for taxpayers, because with the mass appraisal process, especially with the outdated inventory and the appraisal with the recalculation method, it provides a level of informal nature that the taxpayer can come in and either work with us beforehand on any problems with their assessment, or work with the board, which takes 15 minutes, and they make a decision right there, and they're very fair. This year, the board, we didn't appeal any of their decisions to the regular division or the magistrate division. Some of the decisions, but they were all within tolerance. So that we really appreciate the work that the board does with the limited resources that they do have also. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. One more?
Mike, I just wanted to say thank you in regards to your customer service. I occasionally get a telephone call and I refer them to you, and you're generally respond within minutes most of the time, sometimes evening if it's as soon as you get there. But just like today, had a question from a constituent, and you were right on it. So I wanted to thank you for the work that you're doing and your responsiveness to the citizens that we serve. And I wanted to share, Commissioner Like and I was out at Public Works today about 11:30, and the lobby for building permits was full. And yesterday they had shared with me that they had 62 customers that they dealt with yesterday. So they are experiencing a pretty good uptick of activity there. And for the first time in a long time, they are fully staffed and working hard and doing their best. So thank you.
That's because he works 22 hours a day, by the way.
Two more quick questions, please.
Number one, thank you so much for all your service. I agree with Commissioner Stewart on constituent service. It's been very helpful for me and my constituents to be able to get quick answers and thorough answers and follow-up. Secondly, I'm interested in knowing whether the account number has been consistent with the population growth of Lane County. In other words, you talked about the number of accounts in your presentation. Just curious whether that's matching roughly the population growth in the county.
It is. We typically see a few thousand account growth per year. Some of those accounts are miscellaneous accounts, like say garage accounts, but a lot of them are accounts that are created by new subdivisions and partitions, and I expect a stronger uptick this year in account growth than we have seen the last couple of years.
Okay, and last but not least, Multnomah County has sponsored a CPACE program that's in part administered by their assessor, and I know you've been involved in that issue, and I wondered if you could just briefly tell the Budget Committee what that is and what you're doing, if anything,
Sure.
on that.
The CPACE is a energy, essentially it's a program that uses the tax roll to help facilitate energy improvement loans throughout the county, and energy improvement being PV systems or systems on commercial buildings, multifamily buildings, and potentially residential buildings. There's different forms of CPACE. The Multnomah County model, I believe, is focused with a grant from the Portland Development Commission.
Yes.
And seed money, and it's used to help encourage development on the energy efficient side of commercial industrial buildings. And there's pros and cons. We're doing research right now as far as on possible how it's worked in jurisdictions that are similar to Oregon. I know California has some research, and Connecticut and other areas. Multnomah County should be interesting because they're still in the infancy of their project, and I'll be curious in the next couple of years, one, what the default rate is, and two, what the end result is of the project, or ongoing result.
Thank you.
Last question.
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, I wanted to reinforce what Commissioner Stewart and others have said here today, that I think Mike and his team are an example of the can-do attitude in Lane County. You know, he talked about the 20% reduction in fiscal year 12-13. Despite that reduction, they've continued to do, as has been said here, really incredible work with limited resources. Two examples that weren't mentioned that I just want to share with the Budget Committee. The board was presented by a group of residents in the Fern Ridge area, desire to look at a policing district. last year, and Mike and his team, despite their limited staff and all the work that they're stressed to do already, a lot of the work on developing information that helped get us to the point where we were to respond to those constituents' requests was as a result of Mike and his team, and it wasn't easy to do, but I just wanted to point out that workload. Another example, we had an employee recognition where one of Mike's appraisers was out in the field and took great care to work with a resident as part of the work that she was doing in the field. And not every resident is really excited to see appraisers come onto their property. But this appraiser did an outstanding job of working with a resident who had some health challenges and taking great care, and we recognize that appraiser, I think appropriately, to lift that person, really everyone in his operation. As a result of that and the stress they're under, while it's not the resources they need, Mike mentioned this, and I did just want to point out, we proposed an increase for around $107,000 in funding, general funds for assessment and taxation, to provide a little more money for extra help, as well as for some software replacement that's going to be required down the road. So we know they need more, but our hope is that that will at least provide a little bit more resources in the short term.
Sounds like the less you give them, the better they do. Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Finch is up next. And while we're taking a minute, I would like to review the question protocol. The protocol that I think works best for this committee is you get my attention, you go into a queue for questions, and I will call on you according to that queue. Okay? All right.
So we could make a motion at this point in the law to take the 12% that we get and the 30% of the cities get, and reduce that to make it 22 for us and 20 for the cities.
How about 12 and 12 and give the rest to schools? Not that I'm an advocate for education or anything. Mike Finch, Director of Information Services, you're up.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mike Finch. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Lane County, and it's my pleasure to present to you the Information Services budget for fiscal year 16-17. And with that, we'll go ahead and kick off to my agenda here. We're going to talk quickly about the IS mission, our department structure, go through collaboration and partnerships, quick budget overview and trends, talk about some current year successes, upcoming challenges, and some planned projects and opportunities for the coming year. So I'll go ahead and kick on through. Our mission is to provide solutions and services that bring value to our customers, or as we just like to say, solutions, service, value. Our strategic plan is built off of our internal pillars of infrastructure and innovation. That's what we deliver to Lane County. And this, it's a
Your
mic.
real name is
And to support our mission, our department is broken up into 8 divisions. We have administration, which takes care of our budgeting and billing and staffing and all of our needs, purchasing. We have security and audit, which keeps our county and our data safe and secure. Enterprise applications and business applications that take care of our applications either across the county, such as PeopleSoft the budget, and then the business applications, which takes care of business-specific applications for public works, sheriff's office, those kinds of things. We have our geographic information systems department that takes care of mapping applications and addressing for the county and all of those land management kind of functions. Project management office, and our network and system services and client system services. So these are the divisions that make up IAS. This slide represents images of some of our partners, all of our partners. So as you can see, Lane County Information Services doesn't just service Lane County. We actually provide services for agencies across the state, from taxation software to support to supplying essentially cloud services for our partners, such as data center operations, server hosting, and such. So a wide variety of folks we serve. We are very, very pleased to announce that Yamhill will be joining us this coming fiscal year for taxation support. So exciting to see we're still growing and adding partners. To move into our budget, this slide represents our total budget. And then the chart on the slide shows some trending from last year to this year. As you can see, our external services continue to grow. So actually the budget costs are becoming less in comparison to our external services. So this is a great trend. It represents how we're growing and continuing to diversify our revenue sources and provide quality services through economies of scale for a wide variety of folks. My slide is out of order here. So this is the next slide. This just represents a division level trending for our budget as well, which for our GIS program, this is year over year for the last 6 years. You can see the slide on the left how road fund, which is the color in blue on that top slide, comprised almost all of the GIS budget. And now you can see that road fund comprises almost right around 20% or a little less of their budget. That's a true success story in how we were able to take a service and through economies of scale, by providing other ways we can use this service, diversify its structure, continue to provide the services we need for our road fund operations, but supply those services at a lower cost to that distress fund. And the slide on the bottom right there shows the trend for external revenue for that group. It just continues to grow almost exponentially, the new work we take on externally. So it's a great success story. I'll go backwards to go forwards. Another element of our budget we tackled this year is the PC replacement cycle. Worked hard to save costs there by extending the life of our hardware in a very thoughtful way. So we have a 4-year cycle. We still visit those machines on a 4-year cycle, but we reduce the rates for everyone by visiting those machines at 4 years and then targeting equipment that either can last longer because it's proven itself reliable. We haven't had as much warranty work for that, or use the funds on machines that have had problems and replace those at that time so that we don't run into higher costs for hard drive failures or required memory upgrades, those kinds of things. So this is a great collaborative effort. Everybody working hard to, work smarter and get more life out of our equipment to save money. And then 2 slides forward. I won't read each of the bullets here, but these next few slides just represent some of our successes this year. You can see for our county priority of infrastructure, we did a lot of infrastructure level work, from server replacements to implementing some systems that are going to carry the county forward, save us costs as we implement better learning management strategies and such. Vibrant communities, enhancing our communities with new services, from accepting credit cards at Waste Management to putting property records online, more access to property information online with a one-stop shop approach, to a service that is actually for 5 eastern counties, PATS, similar functionality that we host for them as well. Safe and Healthy County, so some of the projects we've done in support of our health and human services and other areas to make a safe and healthy county. And some that really just kind of fall into all the buckets. So some great successes we've had over the year, many of them. One in particular works, I'd love to just talk about for a moment. This system is a very, very innovative system that if you have a storm, windstorm, let's say, and there's a lot of damage caused across the county, this system allows you, our agencies, to coordinate through a map where you can go and identify in a map where there are problems, say some downed trees. Before public works crews can go in and clean up those trees, they have to shut off the power, which is a completely different agency. You have to work with eWeb or Sub. They can use this application. Before, they would have to call on the phone and coordinate over the phone and kind of route people there. A lot of efficiency lost. With this now, they can take their iPad out, open up the map. The public utility can go out, shut off the power, and update that map. And then the public works crews can see real time as the power is being shut off, where they can go next to take care of debris or other things. So a fantastic way that they can collaborate and work together. Just the weather of the weather system here. So the really great thing about this application is it has spawned some other follow-on applications, including a bridge inspections application a culvert inspections application. So Public Works, using the same kind of mapping technology, can take their iPad out, and if they're responding to either maybe some damage or they're just out in an area, they can quickly pull up culverts that need to be inspected or bridges because they have a regular schedule, and they can go ahead and do those inspections for any of them that might be in the area they're located. So that saves them a tremendous amount of time simply by having that there, and they can update it real time on the map as they go. So very, very exciting way we're using technology to bring efficiency to our workforce and save a lot of time and money. Current challenges we face. These are not new. It's the need for us to stay current. Technology continues to change and evolve very quickly over time. We have threats and compliance that we have to stay on top of. Compliance is becoming more rigid as threats become more viable and dangerous and continue to change. So some examples are CJIS, Criminal Justice Information Systems Compliance, HIPAA, payment card industry standards. So staying on top of those is challenging. Anytime we have a vacancy, whenever you budget for something, you have work you expect to get done. And if there's a vacancy, especially in jobs that have a high training set for the skills, getting that talent replaced is urgent because you need to get that work done in the current year. Otherwise, it stacks up on limited resources for the coming year that couldn't get done. And expectations for responsiveness. People expect IS to be responsive and innovative and right there with the business need. And you have to scale correctly to be able to be responsive, but still keep up with the infrastructure you have in place. So then the picture of your mind being blown. So those are some of the challenges, but the opportunities, we have strong partnerships, as you can see. We leverage those opportunities to make ourselves stronger, keep ourselves viable in a difficult circumstance. We have highly engaged leadership. We have great leaders throughout all of our agencies. I've never seen it better or stronger than it is today. And of course, our external service expansion with some of these services you see up there, GIS, A&T, our data center hosting. So some fantastic opportunities there for us to continue to grow. And these are just some examples of our upcoming projects for the fiscal year 16-17. So we have some remote access replacement. We're working on that right now. We have enterprise resource planning service enhancements, so upgrades, expansions of that service. Of course, the addition of Yamhill will be taking that on and putting that into place and migrating all of our public-facing services to mobile-friendly formats. We actually did a lot of work this year with that, and with our new website rolling out, we are poised to really, really close that out in the coming fiscal year and make things accessible to everyone on every device. Any questions and answers?
I guess I'm vice chair. Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you. Are we keeping up with other similarly sized organizations, corporations, other governments that are nonprofits that are about at our size in terms of workforce? So comparing us to other similarly sized organizations, are we've got the right technology to be as efficient as possible?
I'm happy to say we are a leader in being efficient. We are sized a little differently because we are an external collaborator. So we size a little bigger because we provide services outside and bring in that revenue. But for Lane County, we are very responsible in doing a great job for the resources we have. I would say we are a leader in Oregon for technology, providing technology to a county our size through our innovation and our collaboration. But like everyone, there are challenge areas that we work on. The equipment ages out and putting in switches, or the strategy changes. We always need more bandwidth, and that's investing both in infrastructure within our building and then trying to hook into infrastructure that's built in the community, such as the fiber they're running in here. So anyway, there's always challenges, but we're doing a good job in being responsible.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Leckie.
Thank you. Mike, great presentation. Thank you very much for, and it's always good to see, I think, the collaboration that happens, not just here locally, but I think the collaboration that happens statewide. So we've seen that over the years and really commend you and your department on that. Question I have, so just here, it's been a couple years now, but it's been pretty recent. There was a security breach of state and involved personnel information. So how confident are you as far as here at Lane County that a similar situation would not occur here at Lane County?
Well, anytime you access the web or expose a service externally, you introduce risk. And there's no way to ever keep every threat out. But we work hard and do a good job here at Lane County of continually improving our efforts to secure our information and to provide services in a responsible way that minimize risk. Something we actually implemented just very recently is called MSI-SAC, which is our intrusion detection system, which is now monitoring all of our traffic in and out of our county for where it's going. So this service actually tracks if you have some traffic going to a known IP address of the bad guys, and then proactively lets us know that it's happening. So if we have been compromised, it'll tell us. So we continue to add these services and be good stewards. But there is always risk, and that's why we're working.
But if we're asked a question by a constituent, we can confidently say our IS director feels strongly that we're in a good position here at Lane County.
Yes, to the best of my knowledge.
Very good, thank you.
Herb?
With these external partners and the agreements that you put in place for that, how do you determine the cost structure and how that's shared out amongst those organizations?
So it depends a little on the type of service. Sometimes you're just doing materials and services, so you can charge out hourly. Other times, such as our partnership, we do a share. So you look at, say, backups, and we can do a terabytes of backups allocation metric. So here's the total. Lane County uses this much, and we pay on a share basis. And we actually over the last year, have moved to a much more mature service model. So each of our services identified, we're moving more and more towards pricing on an allocation metric of how that we're consuming that service. But in other cases, it's just a partnership share we pay. We've established working with our partners.
So when you do that allocation, do you include your administrative overhead or a portion of that in those calculations?
Yeah. Okay. We distribute most of our administrative overhead across our FTE, so it's very fair that way.
So with your partners, a portion of that administrative costs get allocated out?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? I recommend the 3x5 cards, or I'll take one more.
Mine's not a question. I just wanted to say thank you, Mike. And I also really appreciate your bringing the technology management committee. More frequent updates. You really get a better understanding of what your duties encompass when I don't know how many people you bring, but your different managers that give updates on whether it's website or enhanced speeds of your service or security needs or whatever. I really appreciate you taking the time to make sure we have those monthly meetings and very good updates. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mike.
Very welcome.
It's 2:30 and fresh and healthy, making our country great again. County Council Steve Ginzel.
Brandon's going to do that. Okay.
My name tag on? It's like
I did.
blink and you miss it.
Just take that. Just there, right?
He was a
Oh, it was a pre-planning or something?
yeah, planning.
Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know, I'm Stu Dingle. I'm the County Counsel. There you go. Proud Oregon State graduate. That's why things are in orange.
He's also a U of O graduate. I'd like to just get on the record here.
That one was under protest. So, first of all, for those of you who've been on the committee before, you have a good idea of what County Counsel does. I think it's always good for folks who are new or maybe don't understand. We're like a big corporation. And County Counsel is the legal advice, the legal advisor, the counsel for it. So the interesting thing, or what's different from a lot of other government attorneys which have a very narrow focus, county counsels have a very broad focus. So everything. It runs the gamut. I could tell you my day today has gone from a battle with the state over something with DHS to an employment matter, to a tort claim, to the Trump rally at the event center. So that actually is a pretty good idea of the kind of day that I have. So unlike other lawyers who focus in on one specific thing, we do everything. What's also different about our office, which I think is, I'd like to say we started the trend, but that's probably overstating it. We certainly beat the city of Eugene to it. I believe they copied us, is we have brought all of our litigation in-house. What does that mean? You'll see in some slides later, but what we're doing now is we are handling claims from beginning to end. So the tort claim comes to us, the notice that people who want to sue us are required to provide under law. We get with the risk manager, we manage the claim from beginning to end. And you're going to see later on the financial impact that that's had. In two ways. One is in the cost per claim, and two, in the amount of money that folks spend for legal services. And basically, we're obviously part of the county. We're a department. We want to contribute. And if I could see the next slide, it gets to it really quickly. The way that I think one of the most important ways that we contribute to the strategic vision and the plan of the county is that we try and maintain and conserve resources. Resources that would be spent on lawyers, which I think we can all agree is a waste, except in my case and my staff, and the payment of unnecessary claims. I know the board has heard me say this, managing through litigation is very expensive and very inefficient. It's not a way to run an organization. So, again, when you look at some of the cost savings that we have been able to help in conjunction with partnerships with other departments achieve, frees up other resources for what I think most people would deem to be more productive uses than paying claims. Next slide. So here's some highlights, and this is actually a good slide because what it does is it emphasizes that how far across the organization our department cuts. Not always happy to see the lawyer come, but so this gives you an idea of the broad range of things that we do and some of the ways that we have been able to achieve either better service for our taxpayers and or save money. The first example is we had not been enforcing a statute that has been on the books for a number of years that essentially requires public safety agencies who poach trained employees, recruit and reimburse the agency they take it from. So here's the way it typically works. Small agency hires a police officer, sends that police officer to DPSST, gets them trained all the time, paying them along the way, trains them as a field training officer, gets them trained up, and after 9 or 10 months, a bigger agency comes in and picks up a fully trained police officer. They don't have to pay those costs. Well, there's a schedule in the statute. And so we went back and looked, and we found some of our fellow counties that owed money. And one of the things we did is, again, we're not out to necessarily, sue people or club people, but what we did is we created we worked out a very creative resolution of this issue. We got what our parole and probation department deemed to be a great deal of value in return. It was in-kind services. It was training, things that we would have to pay for otherwise and that we couldn't otherwise do. The second example ends up saving both time and provided better service for our taxpayers. The County Counsel's Office, as you saw on the previous slide, is responsible for responding to public records requests, and we get lots of them, don't we, Miranda? And So, but many times people are simply don't know that they're in the wrong place. Well, we had a system whereby people would call in and they leave a message, and they might say, for example, that I need to get a copy of my divorce decree. Well, they're calling the wrong place. It's not us, it's Circuit Court. So what we did is we created a phone tree, Miranda and Lisa Lacey, so that when people call, it tells them. If you're trying to get a copy of your divorce decree or other records related to this, you've called the wrong number. Call Circuit Court at da-da-da-da-da. If you're calling to get a copy of your birth certificate, the number you really want is Vital Statistics. It's at 1-800 blah blah blah. So the nice part is people don't leave a message and then wait around for us to call and tell them you've called the wrong number. They find out right now. And that obviously frees up my staff's time because they don't have to go back and listen to each one of the messages and then call the person back and make contact and say, you've asked for a copy of your birth certificate, you really need to call Vital Statistics. The third example is the way that we have improved contracting. Jim Cheney in my office is a genius when it comes to this, and he has not only has he gone back and revamped the system, we've gone very paperless, which not only saves money in terms of the paper, it saves money in storage, it makes the contracts more easily accessible. He's made them more user-friendly, so we make sure that our departments are doing things in the most competitive way. With a lot of the budget cuts, one of the positions that went away was a purchasing officer, which was a person that was sort of supposed to help guide people through the contracting process. That fell by the boards. And so we've gone back to being very, doing a lot of more things competitively and getting a lot better price. One of the things I'm very excited about is that last one. Jim has found a system. I was describing this to the chair. It's a new software for the procurement, which is like eBay. Companies will have to bid against each other in real time. So you don't just put it out there and get 3 offers. The last bid gets posted, it's there for so long, and then the other people have to look at it and see if they can bid it. And where it has been used, and again, we're letting some other public entities work out the bugs, they have seen substantial savings in their procurement. You can see why, right? I mean, instead of just submitting 3 bids, they sit there and they look, and they all have to decide, could we still make some money and come in lower? Next slide. Here's some more examples that we've done here. There's the electronic signature process, which is smooth on contracts. And here's another example of just providing better service. It took a significant amount of time to modify the order of assistance to help streamline a process, a regular function of the sheriff's office. That achieved 2 things. It made it happen more quickly, and it provided greater legal protection for the county because both the sheriff and many times HHS was actually implementing that. The large lawsuits, again, without getting into all the details, I mean, that was significantly more. One of the ones that we paid $400,000 for, somebody else paid $6.9 million for, to give you an idea of the savings that we've been able to achieve because of some of the things we've done. And then the final one is we've been trying, again, really putting the emphasis on contracting for 2 reasons. One, we have exposure legally if we're not doing it correctly, but more importantly, the other piece is getting the best price and the best product for the county, so that again we free up other resources. Next one, slide. Okay, so here's an example. I mentioned this earlier. It's sometimes difficult in a vacuum to see the savings. So I know this looks a little busy, but let me try and explain what's going on here. Essentially what you see in that top one is there's a claim. It's an employment claim. And what you see is what would have been paid outside, and this is not settlement costs, these are just attorney fees. Attorneys work in tenths of an hour. They charge you in 6-minute increments. So what does that mean? That means that you're paying a much higher rate, and you can see that just on these 3 claims, just these 3 cases, the attorney fees alone that were saved were $209,000. Just 3 claims. And next slide. The other thing that we do is we work, as I mentioned, across the county. One of the most important and productive collaborations that we have is that we work with human resources. Human resources, employment claims, they are unique in that they are extremely expensive, but most importantly, they're very preventable. What do I mean by that? The sheriff, in particular the sheriff, there's just a certain amount of exposure that goes with that job. There's a certain number of high-speed chases. There's always going to be physical arrest. There's always going to be uses of deadly force. You put 300 people with various drug and alcohol and mental health issues in your jail, you're bound to have deaths, you're bound to have claims. We've taken steps to mitigate those things. But employment claims, the way you mitigate those is through training. Training is cheap, much cheaper than litigation. And so one of the ways that we've achieved that is we've tried to create a very good partnership, a strong partnership with human resources. We want our departments calling. Don't guess. You've got a grievance. Call. What we do through the training is not make our folks experts, we make them issue spotters. Pick up the phone and talk to your analyst. Your analyst, if it's a question that requires a legal answer, they'll talk to us. And over time, we've seen, in addition to other claims that have dropped, we've seen the number of grievances drop. We've seen the number of, and even some of the things that are awarded as part of the grievances drop. And that's because those, just like the other claims I mentioned to you, the ones that come in for property damage or wrongful death or whatever, are managed from the beginning. They're the ones that, someone says, I've got this issue, and we actually, instead of being reactive, we actually plot out and we look at it and we say, okay, is this a policy issue? Is this the kind of thing that we do want an arbitrator to decide? Is this something that we do want to take to IRB? Or is this a one-time knockoff that we want to do a memorandum of understanding with? That sort of thing. In the past, I don't think that was always done. I think it was more reactive. Departments got so far down the road, and once any kind of legal claim reaches a certain point, a lawyer can't always fix it. And so we've been able to do a very good job about managing that. Public records requests. We're trying very hard to educate folks so that there is a reimbursement piece that's built into the statute. We drill into our departments. Do not go out and find the records. You give us an estimate, because if you go out and get the records, we now have them. The way the statute works is that there's an estimate. So again, we get significant reimbursement. There are people who will pony up $300-400 for public records thing that in the past we didn't get anything for. Within my department, I have a lot of flexibility because I don't have any represented employees, thank goodness. So that means that I'm free to use people part-time. I can contract with folks. I can use law clerks. I don't have to worry about a certain kind of work belongs to a certain kind of person. I can do whatever the mix of work is, and it changes from time to time. So I get to take advantage of Stephen Voorhees, who's an extremely experienced land use attorney. I have him on as a part-time employee. I have law clerks that come in and do things. I've had folks that when we've had a sort of an overload of human resources or labor relations work, bring in someone that specializes in that. We also have the ability to go out and get and use people who are outside to do certain kinds of investigations, because from time to time you have people who filed a number of complaints that lack trust and credibility with human resources and or county council. So we go out and get somebody independent. And again, you spend a little bit of money, but what you end up with is a product that provides a greater buffer. And I can tell you that, again, just like with dealing with people fair and upfront with risk claims where we have liability, it's one of my mantras. If we did something wrong, we own it. Let's make it right. People typically don't want to try and get to be millionaires. They just want you to fix their car or pay their medical bills or whatever it is. And if you treat them that way from the beginning, they don't get angry and they don't seem vindictive. Well, it's the same way with a lot of these other issues. So that's what we do. We go out and get an independent investigation. The person comes back and we're able to tell them, look, somebody who doesn't know us from Adam, doesn't know you from Adam, came in, talked to 17 people, and this is what they concluded. Has a lot more validity for them than someone from here telling them that nothing happened. This is another one of those slides that I mentioned. So I came here in 2012, and somewhere in that 2012 period, we created a series called Managing Within the Law. I know Commissioner Bozovich has been in it. We have a couple of folks who've been through it. And the whole idea, that's one I mentioned earlier, which is we get people our managers to spot issues that are potential time bombs early on, get counsel from professionals, the human resources, their analysts, and from county council. Well, you can actually see the results up here. So what does this tell you? Well, first of all, you can see that the number of claims, they may be more in number, and I can explain why that is. But the important thing is look at the amount of money that's been spent on them. They're going down. So that first, at the top slide, they're averaging $6,000. The middle slide, they're down to about $3,900, and now they're less than $1,000 average. Well, what does that mean? That means that we've managed the risk up front. And a lot of times what you're seeing is the payments and the buyouts on a lot of these are simply because it's been a business decision. It's a business decision. If a person will resign and go away and waive all their potential claims against the county for $1,000 or $1,500, that's a good business decision. We're going to spend more time than that responding to a BOLI complaint or an EEOC complaint or even an information request from one of those agencies. But the reason that the value has gone down is because they're just the claims have been managed. There isn't anything. They truly are literally only nuisance value. There's no one even when they have counsel on the other side, they realize we've done everything that we're supposed to do the way we're supposed to do it, so the claim doesn't have that much value. Yeah. That obviously I didn't know that was in there.
That's standard.
Thank you, Miranda.
First of all, I like what I hear. Several very good points in there. A little question about clarification as far as the budget is concerned. When you're talking about employees, what is extra help versus unclassified temporary? How does that... What fits into those categories?
From my standpoint, like the law clerks, which again we're able to sometimes leverage. Sometimes we get them for free because we're giving them credit. But I put them in the extra help category. They work less than a certain number of hours. Steve Voorhees is a 1040 or a temp. Those are two different categories. They don't have as much significance for me because I'm not. Because as I mentioned, my people are not represented. Those categories really have an impact in bargaining unit departments because once you go, a 520, with the exception of I think one bargaining unit, they don't have any rights. 1040s have certain kinds of rights, so that's the difference. It really doesn't impact me.
And then in your budget, where if you go out and you, like you said, hire a consultant or a specialist and so forth, where do they fit into the budget?
It depends on the kind of person, but if it's a litigation person, for example, if we go out and get an expert for that, it gets worked back into the budget the bill that ultimately goes to the department.
Okay.
And that's what I want to emphasize. We point out to departments because they pay back their claims. Is it 5 years? I think it's 5 years. They pay, so it's to their advantage to lower the number and the amount of claims. While it may get paid today, they're going to keep dribbling it out over 5 years. So it makes a big difference to them. And I will tell you this, that a lot of times, because the claims are so small, they're not going to the risk fund because they have enough money in either lapse or because there's been a position open to pay the small amount of money. So they're literally done with it in one fiscal year.
Thank you.
Mr. Sorensen?
I just wanted to comment that one of the improvements that's been made by Mr. Dingle and his staff to the publicly available website is an addition. So besides knowing the office location with driving and parking directions, the Lane County Charter, property damage form, Mr. Dingle's email, all available on the website, as well as the lane code and lane manual. He now has, and I'm happy to say I assisted a tiny bit with this, the quarterly litigation report, so that the Board of Commissioners in executive session has often been briefed on all the cases that they're working on. And this is publicly available so that the public can see the types of litigation that the county's involved in and the extensive and broad nature of it, so that you can see not, what we're doing on any given case, but at least the existence of the case, and what the board gets in executive session is an expanded version of this. And so I think it's helpful to the staff to update this for the public version, but it's also good business practice to update the board quarterly with an executive session on this. And you can see from just clicking on the quarterly litigation report that, and I don't know if this is the first one or the second one, but we're into our first couple. And you have the case number, you have who's suing the county, you have who's representing the people suing us. This one's dated October 7, so maybe...
I think there's one out there. No, that might be the last
the one I see here.
Okay.
That could be a little follow-up from this meeting.
I think we've done one after that.
Yeah.
Must be the wrong
But the one I'm seeing anyway. So the point is that there's a lot of information available if you want to follow some of the litigation.
Commissioner Swords, it's too modest. That was his suggestion, and again, there was a little bit of work that went into creating it, and once we got the format down, I think we tweaked it through a couple of different ones to improve the amount of information, and it turns out it's really not that tough to update it quarter to quarter. And it does give, we don't talk about strategies there or settlement values or anything like that, but it's just kind of basic information to give the public a snapshot view of one aspect of what we do, which is litigation.
Lori?
You mentioned that you would explain whether the number of cases had increased, or claims. I didn't hear that.
Could you go back to that one? Which one was it?
Get that screen off the screen, please.
That's just, okay, let me look here. Let's see here.
11
yeah. Oh, I see, yes. And that is because we are taking care of things that, I'm trying to find the nice way to say this. There are claims, potential claims, and employees that we are terminating that are potentially problem employees. And so we, rather than have those things go on for years and years and years, more and more department, when we see, and that's not a lot, but we will see employees that are involved in a disciplinary matter, but they've also perhaps maybe filed they've used some sort of protected leave, and that's what I mean about the small amounts where someone goes away. So rather, there are more of those, but they're long-term solving problems. And partially it's because we are right there with HR and the department and legal, presenting that as a legal option early on in the process. Does that make sense?
I'm not completely sure how I understand how that explains increasing the number of claims. I mean, you moved from what used to be sort of ongoing conversations into an actual claim and then resolved it?
Right, and those were things that would just go on and on. This would just be what is now a claim. Previously was just a series of grievances and disciplinary things. Exactly. Responding to EOC complaints.
And that gave you an opportunity to resolve it.
Right. Yep. And the settlements we do are the kind that are an absolute general release from the beginning of time. My comment is the beginning of time until the day after tomorrow.
And this number has nothing to do with settlement amounts. This is just the cost to settle the claim.
Yep.
Not the settlement.
Yep.
Right. Thank you.
Larry, last question.
Do those costs of claims include the ones that have gone to court, or if any of them have gone to court?
I'm trying to think of, I can think of one that would have been included in this last one. And now see, there's one that's going to change the number. So that's a good example, yes. So, and you see FY 13-15, I know that there was one employment claim that went to court, and the prayer was for like $600,000 plus attorney fees, which we've been close to.
Prayer is not a religious term in this context.
Yeah, the amount that they wanted, and with the attorney fees, that would have been just almost $1 million. That we achieved a complete defense verdict, and then in addition to achieving a complete defense verdict, we also recovered. Attorney fees are difficult to get for a defense attorney. It's a long story. But I did recover, because that was an employee and a current employee, I did garnish their wages and recover about $1,500 in costs. So, as an example, that case is was number 3 on the other one. That would have, and I think that was generous, the attorney fees would have cost $91,000. The actual attorney fees were $46,000. And we obtained a complete defense verdict.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Miranda. And she, by the way, she's one of the folks that responds to those public records requests in a very prompt and friendly way.
Okay, item 6, County Administration. Steve Wolfrahiski, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And I also want to introduce Greg Rickoff, who's our Director of Operations. Greg joined us about 7 months ago from the University of Oregon and at the City of Eugene prior to that, so he's got some great experience in our local community, and he's going to be a wonderful asset for our organization. So Greg and I are going to tag team here, and we'll try to make up some time. County Administration, I think as all of you know, we're a bit of a hybrid, so it includes administration, the Board of Commissioners, and then operations and parole and probation. And we'll go through each of these areas. County administration, well, first of all, here's the breakdown of the requirements for in the proposed budget. You see, and then the positions, the full-time equivalent positions within each of the areas. Parole and probation makes up about 50% of the total FTE in county administration. And I think for those of you who have been on the budget committee for a few years, you understand that parole and probation is a function that has moved around in the organization. It used to be in Health and Human Services at one time, and then it was in the Sheriff's Office, and then it moved over to County Administration, and that's where it sits today. And we continue to focus on investing and improving that area. So our primary focus in county administration is implementing the strategic plan as adopted by the Board of Commissioners. We have 3 primary priorities that the board has identified that we talk a lot about: a safe, healthy county, vibrant communities, and infrastructure. We do quarterly updates on the board's strategic plan. We just had an annual work session in December of 2015 where the board updated that. We closed out, I believe it was 18 goals that were completed in the first year of that plan, and the board updated goals and added some more. So we have 64 active goals on our strategic plan, and we continue to focus on implementing those. I'll first make a note, and Shanda Miller, our internal performance auditor, is here, and she's here to answer questions when we get to that point, if you may have them. The board has 3 employees: county counsel, who you just heard from, county administrator, and the internal performance auditor. So while the internal performance auditor doesn't report to me, it reports to the Board of Commissioners. For budgetary purposes, the budget resides under county administration, so that's why we have it presented here today. So I will briefly go through Shanda's accomplishments, but allow her the opportunity to expand on that if she'd like. The financial indicators audit, which was presented to all of you on Tuesday evening. The performance auditor is also working on establishing the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, and then the establishment of the internal performance audit committee. Is there anything else you'd like to add now?
I'll just say that I'm also in the middle of a behavioral health services audit right now. Still in the preliminary phases at identifying the specific audit question that I'll have. That audit's underway and pretty excited to be working on that.
Budget and financial planning, which you all are well aware of and familiar with, and our focus in budget and financial planning really has been on building that team, the capacity of that team to provide guidance and analysis and structurally balancing our budget. And that shift really from talking about actual deficits to structural deficits and focusing on reducing internal costs, debt obligations, as well as limiting the use of reserves and identifying stable revenue to fund stable services. We are how many years running for the GFOA award? 14? I think it's 14 years in a row we've received the Government Finance Officers Association award for outstanding budget documents. Public information, Devin Ashbridge, our public information officer, who also joined us within the last year, is not here now because
she's having a very busy day.
Right, and Mr. Rickoff planning for an event of national interest tomorrow evening at one of our facilities. So there's a lot of preparation work that our team is doing in partnership with EPD and other organizations. But I want to just note that our public information office, we've had a intentional focus on improving internal and external communication over the past year, and I think we are beginning to do that. We're doing things like we do monthly employee newsletters that update our employees on a regular basis on the things that we're working on, and find ways to engage employees in different activities. We're doing employee recognitions now, at least on a monthly basis at board meetings, where we bring forward employees to recognize the outstanding work that's happening. We've developed a key communicator group, and this is an effort to work with the media to get our message out, but also recognize that there are individuals in our community that we can connect directly with who are interested in information and updates that we can provide. So I believe over 220 individuals in the community we've identified as part of our key communicator network, and we send regular updates to them. And these are people that we've identified specifically who are interested in receiving updates, and not just receiving them, but processing that information and then sharing it with their peers, their neighbors, their friends, their colleagues. Again, to make sure that we're getting factual information out to all corners of the community. We do regular video messages on critical services, and we continue to work on improving partnerships and a sense of team, both within our organization and throughout the community. And then I'll make a note about equity and access and turn it over to Mr. Rickoff, who really has been the one on the equity and access work and the rest of the things you'll hear about to implement our vision. But we have proposed in the budget a new position funded with reductions in human resources and county administration that will focus on equity and access work. We presented to the board later last year a 5-point plan to improve our connection both within our organization and in the community, improve recruitment, retention, and advancement opportunities in our organization, to institutionalize equity work, to create an equity and access and human rights advisory committee, to use data to drive decisions, and to partner with stakeholder groups in the community to provide support and advocacy in response to incidents of hate and bias and other opportunities to improve our connection with diverse communities. So we're really excited about this work and happy to talk more about it. I think I'll move on, Greg, unless you have anything to add on that, and turn it over to you to talk about operations and the other areas that Greg is responsible for. And I'll just note that we've restructured county administration since Greg has come on board, which has really aided me in reducing from 13 direct reports down to 9. And I think improving really the support that our team gets from their direct supervisor and the areas that I'm then able to focus on.
Well, thank you, and I would ask that you keep the training wheels on today and help me throughout this presentation to make sure I have it at the appropriate level, to don't get too far into the weeds. This slide is really a portrayal of the strategic reporting and management elements. I do not have budgetary authority in some of these areas, which we can talk about, but you will see me on May 10th with the parole and probation team. Today I'm really going to talk about financial services, the county clerk function, and capital planning, a little bit about intergovernmental relations and community economic development, although I do not have the financial reporting elements for that. Within economic development, it's been a big, wonderful year with great things to come. As you know, we lost Glenda Poling to retirement, but we did gain Sarah Means. Many of you knew her as Sarah Case. She's stepped up to the first chair. They have been able to capitalize on some Hatfield scholars that have really done some pretty tremendous work on rural economic and community development. And it's allowed us to launch a Rural Prosperity Initiative that provides greater connectivity, tremendous focus on the community development element, where we're looking at the second FTE, the position that Sarah was in, really focusing on rural issues and connectivity, where there will be an advocate that can help really inform and coordinate the work within the county so that we're all on the same page as rural communities talk to us about the initiatives, their initiatives and interests. So it's listening, responding, and reflecting their values as we move forward. Intergovernmental relations, the big news here really was in the short session earlier this year, we were able to secure $1.4 million in funding for the planning of the courthouse. This is something we hoped to do last legislative session. We were unsuccessful in doing that. We were able to come back and take a second cut at that. That is matching funds, so we'll be finding $1.4 million out of the capital improvement funds. But that can proceed and will really allow us the window to come up with a comprehensive plan, really look at public space downtown and make sure we can coordinate that with other ventures. I was not around for the law library switch, although I have to tell you the parole and probation is very excited to be able to move some of their staff into the building. You'll hear a little bit of this next week. It's an amazing percentage of individuals never make it from their court sentencing over to parole and probation to start their program. By having the first response in the courthouse, we will truly be able to reduce that level and be responsive to it. Elections, I think the county clerk's office in many ways are the unsung heroes. Steve reported to the board last week that not only do we have roughly 220,100 registered voters, an all-time high for Lane County. The staff, those 6 FTE plus about 20 part-time employees, were able to do 26,000 transactions in the month of April. That is not only motor voter coming on board and state obligations to really bring registrations, connect registrations to Department of Motor Vehicle transactions. A lot of that is changing party affiliation at the last minute, but they were able to do that with remarkable precision. Commissioner Lycan, I really appreciate your comments over all of you really. They really have been doing a tremendous job. Moving forward, this is a place where technology matters. We can ignore them at our peril. We tend to focus on them, one day in May and one day in November. But the precision and timeliness of that day makes or breaks the life of a county clerk. And technology plays a greater and greater role in that. The state has initiated a new tabulation system where individuals can track their ballots and ensure that they have been received and counted through a text messaging and email system. We are looking at new tabulation equipment that will continue with the precision. It's amazing to see what folks do with their ballots in terms of additional commentary, thoughts that they want to share with the county or with other elected officials. It's really pretty amazing work when you have to take those hard copy ballots and translate those into precise votes. Deeds and records, my most complimented unit within operations, day in, day out. Again, great precision, 5.7 FTE, 63,000 documents. We get tremendous compliments where county clerk's office across the country struggled with the introduction of same-sex marriages. We've received nothing but compliments in terms of the speed, the deferential treatment, the care that the staff has met with. Right now, the biggest issue for that department is continuing to do what it does without day-to-day supervision. This is the one place in my unit where we had a voluntary retirement. The supervisor for the elections retired, and the supervisor for deeds and records moved over to take over that position. So they're doing a lot of work down a person. Within financial services, it's been a year of transition. These are the folks that keep things accountable, make sure the numbers match, really do a tremendous job with ensuring our transactions are thoughtful, timely, and correct. We are down right now. Our financial services manager took a great opportunity in Health and Human Services. Sometimes we do pilfer our own, and that's a good thing for his career development and a chance for him to see other parts of the county. We're all appreciative that he stayed. But we are also down the supervisor in payroll and down the accountant. So we're hiring by line right now. We brought Moss Adams in to do an audit of the services to make sure we had the design right, the work distribution right. We've not yet received that report, but we've seen some preliminary results. Christine and I worked on this together, and she has been doing double duty as the financial services manager. So she's had 2 very full-time day jobs. Looking at those results, I really expect some great things from this unit. They really are remarkable professionals, and once we get that staff built out, I think we're going to be able to have tremendous strategic partners. Capital planning, Steve, I almost feel like I need to turn this back over to you. This is one of our more notable heroes who's been able to take a program and really leverage creative funding and partnership with the capital funding. He's been able to find e-web dollars in terms of energy efficiency. He's been able to match dollars, look for support monies, and be able to do a tremendous amount of work. I don't know if you want to talk about the wellness center or the clinic.
Yeah, we opened a new community health center in the last year. We opened the employee wellness center, which is a big part of getting our employees healthy and back to work quicker and reducing our employee costs. The data center remodel has been significant in reducing energy costs for the public services building. The remodel that you will see, I really encourage you, if you're available on May 20th, to do the tour of assessment taxation that Assessor Coles talked about. It's just a fantastic example of consolidation, efficiency, and improvement in service that they've done as a result of that in Brian Klinger's work in capital projects. We continue to look at opportunities to find parole and probation adequate space for their needs, to find elections adequate space for their needs, and potentially get out of the building that elections is in and consolidate it down here. And then I would finally say our work on a courthouse, our work on the feasibility, design, and ultimate construction and funding, of course, for our needed courthouse facility and where that's going to live, and the partnerships that are possibilities with the city of Eugene and others. on that significant project are a huge lift, and that will be a focus area going forward. And then I will, this is our one-page strategic plan. I thought I would read it word for word for you right now, if that's
Great.
This is just
Well, you set
briefly.
it to music.
Yes, right, wouldn't that be nice? This is the last one, and then any questions that you have, we'll take. But goals going forward, we continue to focus on implementing the board's strategic plan. Everything that we do in this organization, most of the work that we're doing in this organization is driven by the board's strategic plan. And we're very committed not just to implementing the plan that was originally adopted, but updating that plan and making it a living process that is significant not only for the board, but for the whole organization and the community. The structurally balanced budget, we have a laser focus on that work, and that will continue over the course of the next year, even after this budget is adopted. Strengthening the nexus between mental health and the criminal justice system. Hopefully you heard that message on Tuesday, and you'll hear more of that message next week, where we talk more about not just investing in pieces of the system, but the system as a whole and how they each affect each other. So we're spending a lot of time and effort working on bringing those conversations together, improving our communications, which we think is really important to improve trust and credibility, both within our organization and in the community. Leadership development, you heard me talk about that on Tuesday. That's really important, as Commissioner Lyken has asked about this. That we had 22 voluntary separation incentive plans that were executed in Public Works alone. That's a huge number of long tenured people who are leaving the organization at one time. So we want to spend the time and effort necessary to invest in planning for that turnover and also the development of the leaders of the future in the organization. And one thing that the performance auditor and I are working on is also making a connection with the University of Oregon and creating a formal pipeline for the talent that's being developed there into this organization, and making sure that we tap into that resource as an opportunity for the workforce that we're looking for at all levels of the organization, from field to leadership. Shanda mentioned the behavioral health audit, which is a significant effort that will happen from her office over the next year. Equity and access work, rural prosperity in the courthouse are all focuses for us over the next year. So that's all we have, Mr. Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Again, I'm sorry.
Will we hear more about the equity and access in another meeting, or is this the time to hear?
This will be the time.
The timeline,
Yes,
sort of
definitely.
what the timeline is for that and the scope of that.
Well,
The position
One
itself.
position, right?
Yes.
And then the scope of that.
one FTE. At this point, we've not started with the hiring process. We'll wait for the budget process to move forward before we hire that staff person. There's an internal team looking at the build-out of the Equity and Access Advisory Board that will be a report to the county administrator. We are right now developing the timeline application process, initial trainings for that effort. We are meeting, there's an internal committee, Equity and Education Committee, that's already working, that is actively looking at the training component. There's one of the elements is a required 3-hour training for every county employee, and we're building that element out. We've already hired a remarkable individual, Lori Vinson, in Human Resources, that's doing recruitment work with a particular focus on equity and access and recruitment work. So all of those pieces are moving along very actively, and very excited about hiring this.
So it sounds like it's got both an internal, it's both for the organization itself, but then
Yes,
also
it is.
eventually to interface externally with the community to.
Correct. I would say it's really is equal parts. Part of it is ensuring that all of our services have an equity and access component to it, and there's continuous improvement, so that when we say all Lane County residents, we mean all Lane County residents. And so there's a service review, as well as connecting to the touch points and the critical milestones in the lives of communities made vulnerable by our culture. So there's both internal and external elements.
Okay. Thank you very much to both of you. Great work. And we are taking a break until 3:30.
Commissioner, would you have a moment?
You may proceed.
Okay. So we're gonna, I didn't prepare a lot of slides, so hopefully we can just have more of a conversation. So, as it says, I'm Marcia Edwards, and I'm the director. My colleagues here are Inga Unruh, and she's the Employee and Labor Relations Manager, and Mary Miller, our Benefits and Wellness Manager, and then Lizzie Cunningham, of course, extraordinaire, because she helps out with budget and benefits and wellness, and does all of our wellness challenges. So, just a few things that I'll be going over. I've included our strategic plan, our overview of services, changes this year, some successes we've had, some constraints, and of course, coming initiatives. And I think you've probably all seen this before. It's a familiar format. But what we've done with this, of course, is adapt to human resources issues. So as you go through the slides, you'll see how we've connected what we do in human resources to the county strategic plan. These are some of the services that we provide in human resources. We do everything from class and comp to workers' compensation, training and development, leave administration, also safety. So we are got our fingers in lots of different things, all things employee related. Some changes this year. We reclassed one of our vacant positions to a senior HR analyst, a recruitment coordinator. We did that last fall, and luckily we were able to hire that recruitment coordinator very recently. Laura Vinson has come to us. I don't know if normally public agencies are very passive recruiters, and Laura is bringing more active recruiting to us. So she has been a recruiter in the private sector and is bringing those skills to us and is already having some successes with that. And we also eliminated one vacant position, an administrative support technician. Okay, some of the successes. You may have heard about our Live Well Center. That's our employee wellness clinic. And we took some steps to make this possible, and this was all in our approach to trying to save dollars. We went self-funded last August, so we've switched from being, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the term. Fully insured. I'm sorry, fully insured to being self-funded, which means we're paying all of those bills straight from the county. And then we're also launched a lot of wellness initiatives, a couple of them being Race Around the World, which had us all counting steps and different activities, and more recently, a 5-a-day challenge. What we're trying to do is focus employees towards taking better care of their health and thereby reducing those costs, making them more productive, and making them happier and healthier. And we have also been able to get a little bit of cost participation from some of our employee groups. 626, Admin Pro, and our non-rep employees that are hired after January 1 of 2016 are now contributing to their health insurance. So that's a big step. That's a big step. So those are connected to Safe and Healthy County and infrastructure. And LEAP, which you probably heard about, is our learning management system. Stands for Learn, Empower, Achieve, Perform, and it allows us to provide training to employees 24/7 and deliver those services online. And it's not that we're eliminating that face-to-face training, because we think that's also very important to get that interaction with folks. But it allows us to provide training like sexual harassment training, those trainings that are more rote and that we need to do on a consistent annual basis. Allows us to get those out there to all of our employees. And that's connected to our infrastructure. And some more of our successes. We instituted a new performance management system this year. And workers' compensation, we hired a new third-party administrator that's bringing us better customer service. Online open enrollment, you may have heard the term BIN admin used, and that's the vehicle we use through our PeopleSoft software to provide online open enrollment. Before it was very labor intensive, very paper intensive for human resources, and now it allows an employee to go online, click a button, and select the benefits they'd like to have. EDI, which is an electronic data interchange, those are our medical files, our dental files that we're now sending electronically, again, instead of sending paper. So a big focus for human resources has been how can we do things more efficiently and effectively, move away from the manual processes that unfortunately introduce errors, and send these files electronically. So that's kind of a common theme you're going to see with a lot of what we're doing. And I also mentioned the recruitment coordinator. One of the goals that Laura has is going to be to reach out to more diverse communities, see what barriers might be occurring out there for them in applying to our jobs here at the county, and how we can help them through those barriers and make those connections so we can have a better showing as far as our numbers go around diversity. And those are related to infrastructure and vibrant communities. We offered 206 classes for our employees this year. We did, I think Steve has talked about this, the investment that we've had with our workforce. And so we offer a lot of classes through human resources, and other departments also offer their own specific classes and trainings that they have to meet their needs. We've developed a training module for recruitment and hiring. The goal would be to get everyone that serves on a hiring panel through that. It also has a piece wrapped up in that on implicit bias. Again, we want to make sure that we're educating our workforce and making this a workplace where everybody will want to work. Let's see, 274 recruitments in 2015. So that is actually down a little bit from the previous year where we did a little over 300 recruitments. But recruiting is good. It's good. We're bringing in some really good people. Let's see, we also oversaw and implemented a non-rep compensation study, trying to get our non-rep folks more in line with the market. And we conducted a dependent audit for health benefits, and that was in preparation for going self-funded. Okay, some of the constraints and challenges. Always skill development opportunities for our folks in human resources because they do have large workloads, a lot of projects going on, and so making sure that they get out there, get the training they need to keep their skills up to date. Bargaining is always a challenge. We're currently in bargaining with 5 of our 7 unions. So keeps us busy, keeps us occupied. And the Affordable Care Act has put some new responsibilities on human resources as far as reporting responsibilities. So we've been stepping up the plate on that. And then our workloads, as I mentioned before, just managing those workloads internally. Not only for HR, but also for all the employees across the county. The doing more with less and trying to help those folks with workload issues, morale issues. And also staffing, HR as well as other departments across the county, have been short-staffed in some areas, so trying to help them get those positions filled. And some of the coming initiatives, bargaining, of course, negotiating new and maintaining current contracts, monitoring our self-insured model to make sure it's performing as we want it to, and increasing awareness and usage of the Live Well Center. We've had some very good numbers I think the lowest we had was like, I want to say like 27, Mary, participants in a week, and it's been as high as 43. So that's good. Let's see. Increase offerings through LEAP, which again is our learning management system. We're going to continue to increase those offerings, again, getting training out to as many people as possible. And the new performance management system that we developed this past year, we're going to work on putting that, getting it online and making that electronic for our supervisors and our employees. So that's known as e-performance, again, through PeopleSoft. And increasing flexibility in the recruitment process. I've been telling supervisors if it's not illegal or immoral, we will entertain it. So if there's a different way they would like to go about recruiting than the method that we've normally been using here at the county, let's talk about it. So let's see. And we're going to be continuing our wellness challenges. What's the next one in the pipeline?
Business community.
The business community challenge. So that encourages biking, walking, and ride sharing, I believe. And our new employee orientation, we're looking at redesigning that. We currently run a new employee orientation every single Monday of the year. And we're trying to look at a model that will allow us to get the paperwork done that we need to get done when those new employees come on those Mondays, but will allow us to have a new employee orientation more about culture. So that's one of the things that's going to be redesigned this next year. Those are all the slides I have for you. So if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to entertain those.
Harry, Mr. Bosley.
Marsha,
Yes.
the cost sharing that you listen to, are you going to also attempt to do that with the other unions?
Yes. Our current bargaining sessions, that's one of the things on the table.
And so the ones you've already negotiated, what's the percentage or how does it work?
It's actually a dollar amount.
Which equates to about
Yeah,
how much?
we have two different plans. One, a high deductible plan. Now, the high deductible plan is a plan where the county kicks in a bit of money to a health savings account. And that one, of course, is not as full a coverage. And so it's a cheaper plan for us. The cost for an employees right now on that one, for those new employees, is only $20. But if they do the health risk assessment through our clinic, then it doesn't cost them anything. So again, we're trying to incentivize people to get well, get healthy. On the other one, Mary, is it 30, 60, 90, 120? So for an individual, it would be $30. For a full family, it would be $120. And that's per month. So that would be, even a full family, it's only $60 per pay period. And they can get $20 knocked off that, again, if they do the health risk assessment. Again, trying to incentivize wellness.
Commissioner?
Thank you. And this is probably a combination question for you and Christine. So we've got 5 bargaining units we're negotiating with right now at various stages. What assumptions in building the overall budget for Lane County were made? And did we make some assumptions that there'll be increases in those units and have you guys work together on estimating those increases, or are we going to wait for a signed contract and then deal with it?
We always wait for a signed contract. So the board has not given final direction on what those contracts should look like, so they're not built into the budget. So funds have reserves, but they would then do a supplemental budget, since we can do 3 supplemental budgets, we can do them at any time. So then we would look at changing the budget and what ends up happening with those units.
And kind of having sat in exec session, we're talking about millions per unit. So we've
Over
got-
3 years, though, so it kind of depends on when it's finalized and which
over
budget will
3
it
years,
hit.
but-
Right, exactly.
So, well, I guess
Right.
for this year, it won't be as big. Still all 5 together would probably still be over several million, but it won't some million. I guess it's not that big of a, because they're not all in the general fund, of course.
Right, they cover a lot of funds. There's
Covers
definitely
a lot
still
of
an
funds.
impact, but we address it as it occurs and is finalized.
But to be clear, we're assuming right now zero change from the current contract.
Correct.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Is it fair to put in a multiplier?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Is it fair to include a multiplier like Social Security cost adjustment or some national or regional number so that wages are not assumed to be zero increase, but they're assumed to be some level of increase to address the concern that Commissioner Bozovich just raised, that yeah, we don't know the exact amount, but I don't think it's fair to assume that it'll be zero.
Right.
So if we could assume it to be a percentage like a cost of living adjustment in the Portland metropolitan area or the Oregon metropolitan area or the Wayne County metropolitan area, some data that would be somewhat objective and not stating whether we're going to or not going to grant increases, but just overall having a budgeting of that.
Well, without getting into the weeds too much on how we do the personnel, I mean, we're of course budgeting for our vacant positions, so there's a whole bunch of other things that are built into our personnel budget. So when we get a finalized contract, we would then look at, okay, where are we running our actuals to our budget, and how much more money do we actually believe we will need? So there's already, depending on what's occurring in a fund or a department, and they have reserves, we don't want to overinflate the budget because as you've seen, we will then potentially eliminate FTE based on a budget number that may or may not come to be fact. So taking the more conservative on the budget number.
Mr. Chair, we also budget merit adjustments each year. So we don't budget a zero increase in wages, right? We're budgeting for merits for employees that are still eligible for a step increase, that are still within the range now at the time. So I just wanted to make that clarification. What we're not doing is putting in a number that has not yet been, an additional COLA or some other benefit cost that has not already been agreed to by both the bargaining unit and the board through a signed contract.
Okay. Go ahead. So, Marcia, I was curious. I think we're probably, about 3 months into the Live World Center?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah, it was like March 24th, I believe. February 24th.
So I've been going there fairly regular, and it seems like they're pretty pleased with the number of employees that they're getting. Will it take a year? How long do you think it will take before we can actually quantify the benefits of that?
Yeah, well, I'll certainly feel better once we have a year's worth of data under our belt, so we can start seeing some trends, and do a better measurement of the ROI.
I was just going to, if I could add to that we're having quarterly meetings with our benefit consultants and with Marathon Health, that is the provider that's actually running the clinic. So it was a private contract with Marathon to staff that clinic and lease the facility. So we're having quarterly meetings. They're providing reports on the number of individuals that we're seeing and doing estimates on cost savings as a result of each of those patient contacts. So there's a lot of work that's going in. Marcia's absolutely right that we need more time to thoughtfully evaluate, but there's a lot of work that's going into tracking the data ongoing and determining the success level that's there.
And that was exactly my question, and just what those metrics are, how to determine its cost effectiveness, its success.
Right. And, basically it'll be, are these, the clinic does a lot of health coaching, and the beauty, one of the beauty parts of it is they're able to spend more time with a patient than a patient will normally get with their regular physician. So they're able to spend a little more time with them in that health coaching and and in that way, we're going to be able to measure, are the number of meds going down? Are the number of visits increasing? So more people are using the clinic.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia Edwards. Okay. As a long-term member of the Budget Committee, I think that what we just discussed about establishing extra expense pending the result of the negotiations, I understand that you don't want to tip your hand and there are other issues at stake, but it's a little inconsistent not to have something in next year's budget to anticipate potential increase. So this may come up again in conversation of it last night, or if you want to nip it in the bud, Ed and Christine and Steve, in the next 30 minutes, I think that might be a good idea. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do. I think, though, I would just add maybe that it follows the way we build the budget in general, which includes the revenue side. I mean, we do not, if we think we're going to have a grant or have an idea, we don't want to build things in that we don't know about. So
Right.
budget law anticipates that we will have changes and can make changes to the budget. And we haven't, in the time I've been here, had any extreme variation where we really had to make a change to the budget based on a contract.
Okay.
And I think it's because of those budgeted vacancies, because we budget merits. That's based on the employee population right now. Of course, we know we'll have turnover. So we just take a look at the best data at the time and build it that way.
Okay. I guess what I'm referring to is health. Back when we were paying health insurance premiums, you anticipated before you got the bill. PERS, you've certainly done a good job of anticipating those increases and building those into the budget. It would seem that 5 contracts is going to likely cause an increase in personal expense, but if you are comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. Okay? And anybody else?
I think it seems reasonable to me the way you're doing it, because there are things that could go the other way too. They could come up with cost sharing, health benefits, family members, and who's to say how it's.
Okay. Okay. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, general expense. Christine.
John's been loading these up, so I'm not sure where it is. And I think, yes. And Mary's going to stay because the funding of our health insurance and those items is in general expense in the benefit fund, so there's the opportunity for some additional questions. This time around here. Okay, so general expense. This is a consolidation of our non-departmental mandated and essential payments and services. So you don't see them out in the individual departments in some cases, but see the funds coming into general expense. And I'll explain the different ways that occurs. But we have our debt service payments, the general fund, and by that I mean the discretionary general fund revenue that comes into the county, as well as the reserve for the general fund lives in general expense. Our risk and benefit funds. So while those functions and programs are occurring in human resources and county council, the fund itself sits within general expense. Special services and projects, which I'll show you what those are. And then Title III funding still. We do have some of those funds left still with Secure Schools. And finally, tourism. So I'll start off with debt service, and you've heard a bit more about this since last budget year. So I have some additional information for you on debt payoff. But the goal of debt service for the county is that we want to manage our debt in a way that minimizes debt service requirements, leaves enough capacity for capital projects, and we want to have the highest practical bond rate that we have in order to make any bonds that we do go out and get have an affordable interest rate to us. We do prepare a debt affordability report. Finance prepares that every year. It comes to Finance and Audit, which is an internal committee, and then is posted out on Finance's website. So I've given you the link there if you have interest in that. It shows the debt, how we compare to our legal limits, how we compare to other jurisdictions of similar size. Also talks about all of the debt held within Lane County, meaning school districts, cities, everyone else, to look at the debt and compares it to the per capita. So it has a lot of great information in there. So the county is limited on how much debt it can carry by statute. We can carry debt that is, for our limited tax full faith and credit bonds, 1% of our real market value. That is a pretty huge number for a county with such a large real market value. So the chart down there on the left shows you our total debt in blue and the capacity, that limit, in red. So we're nowhere near that limit, and from what I've seen, no other county or city gets near their limit either. The county currently has no general obligation bonds. Those are different from the bonds we currently have in that a general obligation bond would have a separate tax to the community to pay for that bond. The last example we had was the Juvenile Justice Center. For 20 years, there was an extra tax out there. It was about 10 or 11 cents per thousand to residents, and that was paid off last fiscal year. You probably remember that from the process. So our total outstanding principal debt as of the end of the current fiscal year will be about $83 million. And we next year will pay about $10.7 million in the annual payments. Now the pension bond, I want to point out though, is considered in both of those numbers, and our PERS pension bond, which we use to prepay some of our unfunded liability to PERS, makes up $51 million of that $83 million, and also $6.7 million of the $10.7 million. So it is the big bulk of our debt currently. So with the issue of prepaying some of our debt when we're able to, we continually are looking to make sure that we have refinanced our debt when rates are better, and that we consolidate debt. But we also have in the board's Lane manual, they talk about the extent feasible using one-time revenues to pay off one-time capital or project expenses. So many of our debts are the result of capital projects. So beginning in last fiscal year, or current fiscal year that we're in, last year's budget prep, we're starting to reserve some money to prepay some of our bonds. So you may remember last year we talked about the AIRS project and the Charnelton. Well, this year we're talking about the Charnelton, the Customer Service Center out at Public Works. So we used some of those one-time Secure Rural Schools funds. So in 16-17, we will be budgeting for a proposed future payoff of debt using some one-time money from Health and Human Services for our Charnelton building. So the debt is not callable here for, I think it's in 2020. So the amount that's coming from H&HS is actually about $7 million. That money will be used to pay the payments over the next few years, and it's estimated we'll have about $4.4 million to do a prepayment when it comes time that we'll be able to do that. And by doing that, the interest savings will be about just over $1 million. So it frees up the operating money. You heard how that impacted the general fund positively, and then it saves money to our taxpayers by decreasing the interest that the county will pay. And I reference a page in the budget document here for you that has a full page just on the debt and kind of goes over what we did last year, and then what I've just reiterated here about the Charnelton building, explaining the debt payoff, if you want more information. So as I mentioned, the general fund, discretionary general fund revenue comes into general expense. The bulk of that is our property tax revenue, which is up about $37 million. We also have some cigarette and liquor tax revenue, amusement tax. Those come from the state shared revenues. Our car rental tax, which is a local tax. And then any timber payments from our ONC lands or Secure Rural Schools, when that existed, also go into general expense. The expenditures are fairly limited within general expense. They're going to be things that are more county-wide. So our debt service transfers the general fund may owe. Right now it's just for the Charmelton building, are transferred out of general expense. We pay some legal ad expenses, less than $20,000 a year, most of those occurring in assessment taxation and things like the budget noticing, publishing our budget. Association dues, we typically have a separate handout for you, but I did not print it for you, but I will get it to you. That just shows the associations that we pay dues to. There's no change in those from current year. And then we pay for Metro TV, which is recording these meetings in order to have our public meetings televised. And then the reserve, as I mentioned, contains the 10% minimum under policy, as well as a service stabilization reserve, which we've discussed a little bit at the first meeting, talking about the plan to get rid of the structural deficit and how we will use reserves in the current year, 16-17, and then also 17-18. Just a little more detail on the reserve policy. That 10% reserve that's within the general fund does make up two components in our lane manual. 5% is designated as the emergency cash flow reserve, and then a 5% is referred to as an economic stabilization reserve. So if there were ever a need to go below the 10%, there's some guidelines that the board has adopted about when that 5% could be spent. And it has to be revenue growth being below 2.5 annually, unemployment rate fairly high, and then if used, a goal to restore it within a couple fiscal years to make sure we keep that financial health and those reserve levels as stable as we can. So the risk and benefits, first we'll cover the risk fund. So that fund holds reserves for payments of both our general liability and our workers' comp claims. Both of those programs, general liability being managed by county council, workers' compensation occurring in human resources, the program running those. We do have an outside actuary report done on that fund every 2 years to make sure that we're reserving enough based on our claims experience and any outstanding claims that we have. And that is going to be due here in this summer, so we'll be having another one done. And we have about $4.3 million in reserves for the 16-17 year, which we do believe is right in line with what should come back in the actuary report. We do also purchase some excess liability insurance, and that was due a few years ago to some claims limits that were raised by the legislature. So we felt that rather than increasing our reserve, we would also buy some excess liability insurance. The benefits fund. So the benefits fund holds the funds that are collected from departments that are charged out for health insurance costs, dental insurance, PERS, deferred comp. So when a department pays those charges through payroll, it comes into the benefit fund, who then pays the provider. Or now, in the case of our self-funded health insurance, we created a sub-fund within the benefit fund, and that we pay our claims directly out of. So still working with Pacific Source as our claims administrator, and we pay some other administrative stop-loss insurance, other fees out of there, but paying the claims out of there. So, so far this year, 15-16 being the first year, you heard about it last year, things are trending better than originally anticipated, than forecasts on the claims side. And then we also, as you have heard, have opened the employee clinic and have some wellness initiatives. So at this time, I'll ask Mary if she wants to add anything about the
I think, again, it's good news right now, and part of the trending is, the claims aren't as high as we thought they would be. Also, with the ACA, there's some, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So as Christine mentioned, the claims are trending better, which that's the majority of what we're paying. We pay about $1.4 million a month in claims, and our admin fees are about $180,000 a month. That still is significantly below the $2.1 million we were paying monthly to Pacific Source when we were fully insured. So we're seeing some really good cash flow there. But we are also seeing that our claims are a little bit below trend. And actually, we think our renewal is going to be pretty flat. So that's considering that in the past we've thought potentially 6 to 8% increases in healthcare. We do have some ACA benefits too that have come because of some of the taxes that are levied on the fully insured plans. We aren't going to get those now because we're self-insured, but we have some other PCORI fees and other things we'll have to pay. But it's still, when it all nets out, we're a couple $100,000 cash flow improved every month so far. Is that right?
Okay, we also have a PERS reserve in the benefit fund, which you've heard me talk about before too. Back when there was a decrease in employer rates in 13-14, the county held the rate that we were charging out to departments higher at the original rate for a year as we awaited the Supreme Court decision, which turned out to be a good move because the changes were largely reversed, and so now we will have a balance of $2.2 million countywide to help address those increases that we will see beginning in 17-18. We also have a retiree medical insurance benefit reserve. This is a grandfathered benefit, meaning it's not granted to any employees that were hired after a certain date. Most of those ended back in the 1990s,
Right,
I want to say.
91.
Yeah, 91 was the last employee group. So we fund that fund through a payroll charge internally, and it's about 3.5% of payroll now. It originally was 5% of payroll, so it has gone down as the county has made changes to the health insurance plans, and rates have not increased as fast as originally projected. So the county pays for employee-only insurance, and then until they're eligible for Medicare, and then the county pays the Medicare piece. And the reserve is now at a point where it's decreasing each year, so meaning we reached the point where we had funded it enough, and now we'll be paying down the reserve. And actuaries also performed on that fund every 2 years, which is due to, Mary also manages this. And it's due to happen this summer to make sure that we're at a point and we're charging the right percentage through payroll.
Just that we're looking at ways to streamline the process. We pay out significant dollars for the Medicare reimbursement, and also, but we do actually collect money from retirees too, so it's a lot of bookkeeping, and we're streamlining that process, and we're going to use an outside vendor to make sure that it's more efficient and accurate. So that'll start this summer.
Okay, then the category that's referred to as special services and projects, economic development. The video lottery money that funds the county's economic development also comes in through general expense. That is, there's a county policy lane manual that says the board wants to keep a focus of 50% of those funds occurring in economic development strategic investment projects, 50% in the general allocation programs. And it includes things like our economic development staff is funded through video lottery. We have some that goes out into youth services for some job development is another eligible use. And then we have quite a bit being reserved towards strategic investment projects at this time. And then courthouse facility security. That's a court security fund that we have to maintain by statute. A piece of the court fines, fees, and assessments goes into that fund and helps pay for court security, the security station that you see as you come into the front of the building. Capital projects, we're just closing out the Juvenile Justice Center construction fund. So the hope is that it will be gone after this next year. There were just funds left from the GO bonds that were used for improvements and repairs on that building as things occurred. And then the county school fund is another fund that is something that we have to maintain by statute. A portion of our National Forest Service payments or Secure Rural Schools, the money that Road Fund receives, there's a piece of it that goes into the county school fund. We then transfer those funds to the Learning Education Service District, and they distribute it out to the local school districts. So that is an impact that many times is not, you'll hear us talk a lot about the road fund and the general fund, but there is an impact to schools when Securable Schools funding is not renewed also. Title III, the piece of the Secure World Schools money that we do still have within general expense. And we have been using that to fund a Firewise community program that is out in land management in Public Works that works with homeowners that are have that, if they have the forest land coming right up against their property, helps them become educated and even do projects on their home to make them more fireproof if something came up right up on their property line. So we have the grant program. And then we also still fund search and rescue and dunes patrol in the sheriff's office with some of that funding. So there's the amounts for you for 16-17. We do still have in the SRS 2013 and 14-15 about $2.9 million left that will be used for Firewise programs into the future. And then the original Secure World Schools money that did not have an expiration date on it, it just still has to be used for search and rescue, dunes patrol, things that were eligible there. So we still have a little bit of balance likely for 17-18 for those two programs. Transient room tax comes through general expense also. We fund tourism, marketing with Traveling County currently. We're working on a grant with them right now for continuation there. We also have a capital improvements, which is the Lane Event Center. Many of the bond payments for Lane Event Center property are paid for with transient room tax, and they do use some operating funds, which you'll hear from us on that last deliberation night about the amount that they're requesting for operations. The Historical Museum receives funding, Rural Tourism Program. We have in the code designated special projects, which I'll touch a little bit more on in a moment. And then transient room tax also goes towards our parks system. They do collect transient room tax when they have people pay a camping fee. And we've a fairly conservative increase of about 3%. Transient room tax over the last 2 years has had exponential increases. I mean, a lot of it's the economy increasing. There was also a movement towards getting those online intermediaries to pay the tax, Expedia, Travelocity, who had not been paying the tax, and so local governments have seen an increase because of that. And then more and more of the vacation owner rentals also, and getting that education out that the tax is really due on anything that fits in the code of a certain length of a stay. So the change that I wanted to mention with the special projects is that the proposed budget does contain a shift in funding, and it involves both the car rental tax that is being decreased in parks and moved to the general fund to help support some debt payment. And then in order to keep parks whole, we have shifted transient room tax of the same amount from the special projects portion of tourism over to parks. And special projects had a grant program that it was running every year where communities could ask for, I don't know if there was a dollar limit on it, but an amount for an event related. And so instead of doing those grant programs, special projects will be going over into, those funds will be going into parks to help support them. And then also there's a $70,000 a year payment going out of special projects to Tracktown. And that's been committed by the Board of Commissioners through fiscal year 1920. So working more on the larger events, the larger impact with that program. Do you have anything that you want to add on that piece, the special projects piece?
Not unless there are questions.
Okay.
I would just add that those special projects generally are $5,000 to $10,000 grants. Mm-hmm. And there's they can be pretty much anybody that qualifies.
Yeah.
So kind of start the money that helps start the wood carving festival and up at Mackenzie Track and several different things around here locally. So.
Tourism events, of course, because transient room tax has to be linked back to tourism.
The other thing I would add on that is, we analyzed the last 3 years of the grant awards, and typically no event was given resources from that special projects grant program 2 years in a row. So one of the considerations we had, and this was discussed by the board during the leadership team meeting in January about the potential of moving car rental tax, and so we looked at this as a way to sort of keep parks whole, and again, part of the consideration was the fact that we didn't feel like there were resources that these organizations were relying on to operate. They were one-time grant funds that were being provided to help support great events that are happening at a minimal level. But I think it's certainly a discussion I'd encourage the budget committee to have, and you may agree or disagree with that proposal.
Christine, are you done?
I am done. That's the last slide.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Could you put that slide?
Oh, yes.
With regard to the use of the transient room tax, the transient room tax was being used to support those special small projects, which we are getting rid of as a result of this proposal. But now we're going to use not the car rental tax for parks, but the transient room tax for parks. Now, the car rental tax was not restricted, and it could be used for parks. My question is, can you use the transient room tax for parks, since the purpose of the transient room tax is to promote tourism? Have you gotten a legal opinion that spending the transient room tax on parks is within the authority of the state limitations on the spending of transient room tax?
Yes, and we have used transient room tax in parks since about 2008.
Okay.
So this is just increasing their amount, and it's actually pretty clear in statute. It talks about campgrounds as unallowable.
So the good news is that we're maintaining $201,554 for parks. The bad news is we're getting rid of all those little festivals and funding those little festivals that we had done through the special projects. Thank you.
Okay, Larry?
So where does the transit room tax show up on the financial summary anywhere?
What page are you on?
71.
On page 72.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be in the back of general expense.
Just right about fifth down. Yeah.
Page 72. Yeah, there's actually an account called transient room tax.
Thanks. And I have one more on the Medicare payments for retirees. I think, Mary, you said some money is collected from employees.
Yes.
What is that?
The county offers a program through Regions, which is known as an egg whip. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but what it does is it offers 3 levels of coverage. There's a basic, an advanced, and an enhanced, I think they call them. So retirees that enroll in the basic plan, it's a cost of $59 a month. The county pays that whole amount. If they choose one of the higher 2-level plans, they have to pay us. So we'll pay the first $59 and then they pay us the difference. And then we also collect money from retirees who want to cover a dependent under the county health plan. And so we bring in about $56,000 to $60,000 a month for those different expenses.
Commissioner,
First is a quick question, and I've got a deeper question about maybe a policy change. First one is your estimated marijuana tax for the year is only $120,000. That seems kind of low for what the state's been ballyhooing and trying to do the 10% for counties and approximately 10% coming to Lane based on population. I was coming out with higher than 120, so.
Their estimate was actually $40,000 to us for the first year. And I didn't bring it with me, their formulas. And it did, so with figuring that the first month came in 3 times
Must
higher.
have a really high admin cost. Okay, and then the second one was in your discussion of the reserves and the 5% that's the stabilization. A couple years back, when we actually were in the situation where we had a drop we're below 2.5% growth. In fact, if you look at the SRS federal funding, we're still going below 2.5% growth because the drop in that outweighs our growth in the property taxes in the general fund. And, at least now we're not above 7% for employment, but we were back a few years ago, and I made an attempt to try and use some of that 5% to do some funding. And there was a lot of resistance from the financial staff based on the fact that dropping below 10% at any time endangers all of our bond ratings and financial ratings from Wall Street, et cetera. Is that something maybe we ought to just consider dropping that language and saying we just need a 10% reserve period rather than saying it's available for service stabilization? Because the one time we made an attempt to use it, there was a lot of resistance to using it at all. And I look at what's going on with Sheriff Patrol now and how much it's costing us to rebuild what we cut. Those years we could have used that 5% to hold them whole. So is it really that there's just a 10% reserve we need to hold in the general fund? And we might, maybe the budget committee could weigh in and the board eventually take action and change that language?
Yeah, I think you're going to hear that from your financial staff because a lot has been learned even since when I first came to the county, I believe it was 5% reserve in the general fund. If we really got down to 5%, we can't make it even at 10%, we can't make it until we collect property taxes. So we will, if we really drop to 10%, we're even going to be taking out tax anticipation notes in order to cover the general fund. So it's still going to impact your bond ratings. We're hearing more from the bond rating agencies since the financial crisis that they really prefer reserves that are higher than 10%. So some of us worry even about the 10%. So I'm just, when I'm showing that slide, that's the current board policy and Lane manual. I think you'll hear us come forward with a couple financial policies that we will suggest. I think we have overall very strong financial policies, but some around tightening up the reserve policy, general fund lapse, and the structural balance of the budget isn't really addressed currently in financial policies would all be great things for the board to revisit and look at again over the next year or so.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask a couple questions. Can you go back to the Title III slide?
Yes.
Could the Budget Committee discuss appropriating more to search and rescue based on that?
No, because that's the amount that they're eligible for. So they can only bill Title III for the time that they spend on the federal land.
Okay.
So they actually will, when they send in for reimbursement every quarter to me, I process those, they will say, they track their time. This is how much time we were actually on the federal land, and this is their estimate of what they think they will spend out of Title III.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And what our transit room tax, what's the percent we charge?
It is 8% county, although then it gets really confusing fast. So if you're in a city limit, though, the county is only going to get a portion of that. They lose about 3 of the 8%. So it depends on where you're at in the jurisdiction.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just paid 18% in southwest Utah, and they kept a straight face when I asked them about it.
There you go. Well, yeah, then you'll have a city on top of it. You've got the state on top of it. So even the 8 is not going to be the limit of what you pay. Yeah.
Well, board members, I just paid 18%. And that seems that I don't think that's that outrageous compared to places I've stayed in the Pacific Northwest.
Do you remember the kerfuffle at the last legislative session over a 1 or 2% increase?
Yes. Yes, sir.
I'll just mention, relevant to this slide, that on recently, I'll say May 2, Senator Crapo of Idaho and Senator Wyden of Oregon released a letter to the majority and minority leaders signed by 31 senators of both parties stating that they wanted to have SRS renewed, that Senator Wyden was the original sponsor of the SRS program that was signed into law, and I had the privilege of watching President Clinton sign it into law in the Oval Office, and that the National Association of Counties estimates that since the SRS program has expired, that counties have lost 80% of the revenue. And I think our number that Mr. Mulcahy had, how much? 91. So we were at the high end of that. But the National Association of Counties stated that there were 720 counties and 4,000 school districts affected by this, and that overall the payments dropped by 80%. But the good news is that 31 senators is not quite a third of the entire membership of the U.S. Senate, and there are folks on both ends of the aisle and both sides of the spectrum, from Dianne Feinstein and Al Franken and maybe Patty Murray on one end, and maybe Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, and Senator Crapo of Idaho. So quite a broad spectrum of legislators co-sponsoring the letter to their leadership. Now this is May. This is not, done. The budget they'll keep fighting on it over the summer till the fiscal year begins. But I think it's a bit of optimism.
Okay. Christine, anything else? Okay. Then we go to number 9, Budget Committee business. Is there any Budget Committee business?
You all the minutes from today's meeting and Tuesday's meeting, so you'll have a chance to look at them before it's time
Where does he work?
I didn't see it on camera, and I didn't catch it.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? Adjourn.
See, got a third of the Senate sign that letter, got a third of the Senate up for re-election every year.
I think
that math work now?
Yeah, math worked out pretty well for me. What's pretty interesting is when I was in D.C. in February, Senator Wyden said dead, period. So it sounds like it was more of a campaign letter than it was.
I left a little bit
stuff too.
If I have to go to Portland, I will, and if I don't, then I will. I'm not sure if this is